A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining our Homeopathy 24/7 podcast. We are going to be speaking to an array of international guests who will share their knowledge and experiences of homeopathy with you. We will discuss all types of subjects such as remedies, symptoms, and stories of health. No matter where you are with your homeopathic journey, we aim to inspire you on your quest to natural health and living. The podcast is brought to you by Mary Greensmith, the founder of Homeopathy 24/7, which is a global platform connecting you with a homeopath wherever you are in the world, 24 hours a day. So let's get started with today's chat. Please welcome Mary Greensmith.
Hello, Roger Savage. It's lovely to see you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
And Mary, thank you for inviting me.
Roger, I thought today that we could possibly talk about what we do with our clients, the people that we meet that have had lots of antibiotics, and how that has affected their health. And I know that you deal a lot with human chemistry and that method of prescribing. Would it be okay for you to explain a little bit more about it?
Yes, of course. So as you say, Mary, people these days have almost always had some antibiotic treatment, and in some cases, a very great deal of it. Now, of course, there can be urgencies, such as Saturday evening, no homeopath available, crisis time, we call the emergency services, and somebody has an antibiotic because they're in a serious state. Fine, understood. But what we as homeopaths are not happy about is the extent to which these antibiotics are prescribed. First of all, even in medical circles, they acknowledge that the more these are used, the more people's immune system perhaps, and certainly the supposed bugs, can become resistant to them. So we end up giving more and more of the drugs in stronger and stronger varieties. What people, when they come to us, are often surprised to hear us say is that these treatments come at a price. Because although in the orthodox world, they say these drugs pass out of our body within 2 weeks at most, we in homeopathy see that the after effects can linger for year after year. It's cumulative. If somebody has some appalling tooth eruption and can't get to the dentist for 3 days and has a few doses of an antibiotic and it was 20 years ago, so what? The body is adaptable. But it's when somebody has been on half a dozen courses a year for the last 20 years that we see the problem. And what we find is that this can be what Hahnemann, who introduced homeopathy to us 200 years ago, what he used to call obstacles to cure. And one well-known 20th century homeopath wrote a book with the title When the Indicated Remedy Fails. Now, his very witty son said, when the indicated remedy fails, it isn't the indicated remedy. So you get a good laugh for that. But as human chemistry practitioners, we say, well, it's the apparently indicated remedy, but it couldn't get a hold of the problem. Now, why not? And we use expressions like toxic overload, or there is a blockage or something. And the point of human chemistry is to clear those blockages. As Hahnemann said in, I think, paragraph 3 of his main work called The Organon of Medicine, that the job of the practitioner is to see what may be the obstacles to cure and make it his business to clear those. The debate in homeopathic circles is how we do that. The strictly classical prescriber who gives one remedy in minimum doses says, if I get the right remedy, it will cut through everything. Now, my individual answer to that is this. People have, or can be, as it were, graded into a number of levels of health, as one famous homeopath has written about in a book. The people in the highest levels of health, first of all, we may hardly see them as patients. Secondly, if we do, it may only be an acute condition. And thirdly, they will be easy to treat and may never need the human chemistry approach of clearance of problems at all, because their immune system is so strong. They only have very shallow symptoms. But the more we go down the levels, the more our past medical and environmental and genetic history can, as it were, get on top of us. And it's a more involved task in getting rid of those layers so that we can again restore health. I wonder if that, as a basic introduction to the idea, makes some sense.
Roger, that's a lovely explanation. Thank you so much for that. And I'm just thinking that there are so many people that we talk to that, of course, have had lots of antibiotics and feel really guilty because they have had antibiotics and they didn't know there was a choice at that stage. But what you're saying is there is something that can be done about it. There is something that we can do with homeopathy to help clear those past antibiotics.
Mary, that's it. You're right. We don't want to make anybody feel guilty, nor are we criticizing the medical profession, because they have certain tools. They see conditions ranging from the minor to the extremely serious, and they know a particular way of working and believe that they need strong measures for serious conditions. And they say that it is true that every drug will have some unwanted effects. The question is, are those so-called side effects less serious than the condition they're treating? Now, sometimes, Mary, you will find listed among the side effects of a drug death, which seems to me rather a dire side effect. Now, of course, statistically, the likelihood of anybody dying of such treatment is very low, but it's had to be recorded. Now, if drugs are that strong, that again emphasizes what I was saying, that as homeopaths, we see these treatments as having a major effect on the underlying health of a person. And when they come to us saying, I'm not well, oh, when did it start? Well, oh, yes, I suppose it's when I had whatever, perhaps glandular fever, chronic fatigue, whatever. And oh, yes. Or they might say, when asked about timing, oh, of course, that's the year I did the trip to the Far East. And I had those travel vax. I never thought about that. Oh, right. Yes. And in homeopathy, we call that never been well since.
Mm-hmm.
And often we find those factors are sufficiently active and dominant that we must balance them and neutralize them before we can proceed with the treatment we would like to give to a patient. So, in a sense, this is what I'm saying. We're criticizing nobody. We are not wanting anybody to feel guilty. But the fact is, this person, this patient, has now come to us either from an inner sense, there must be some other way, or a family member or a friend has recommended them. And to some degree, at least, they are ready to handle things differently. And interested to hear what we have to say on the matter.
And so, of course, the human chemistry side of it, the way of practicing and going through the remedies. Are one, using different remedies, is that correct? And two, using a slightly different protocol than we would usually use with classical homeopathy, and yet it works well with classical homeopathy.
Well, what I have said in each one of Ton Janssen's books, in the preface and on the back cover, is that when the obstacles to cure have been dealt with, Ton Janssen and all of us are classical homeopaths. He is not giving and is not teaching one to use deliberate mixtures of remedies, but we are looking at what may be causing this person not to be able to progress further towards health. Now, one of the first things we find can be a problem is steroids, because hormones are the most powerful substance, active substance in our body. They are in minute quantities and yet influence every aspect of our lives. And steroids are naturally made in the adrenal glands. But if we then extract that product of the gland or synthesize it and then give it in big doses, this is really quite a hit on the body. And over the last 30 years or so, steroids, cortisone, prednisolone, etc., have been, in many, many circumstances, the drug of choice. And this is one that we do have to neutralize. Now, if somebody says, but if you give me your treatment, will I lose the benefit of the drugs I've taken? The answer is no. What we find is that by our method, we minimize or neutralize the ill effects, but leave the benefits. Now, another big barrier to recovery is the modern kind of immunization, the messenger RNA doses. Now, without getting into a political hot potato, it is simply to say these have a very strong effect. They are supposed only to affect the genetic structure of the invader virus, but we think they do also have some effect on our structure. And there is, as you've no doubt heard, a new flu vax being prepared, which is a compound, and they say is aimed to work on the same principles as the corona jab. So we are expecting this to be another thing with strong effect, and we will have to open our treatment by neutralizing the lingering side effects of that treatment. Then we must neutralize steroids if they've been taken. And also, and this is another hot subject with so many women, you will understand, the contraceptives, the birth control pill. Now, neither in the consultation nor here are we going to get into a debate about that. It's only to say they are once again hormones. They are meant to have a strong effect, and they do have a strong effect, and they can lead to any number of problems that, of course, in the orthodox world are not acknowledged as connected. Because when any drug or treatment is assessed in orthodox reviews, they generally confine their period of examination to 10 days after the administration of a dose or substance. And in homeopathy, we know that effects may be noticed long after the 10 days. In the orthodox world, they say we can't look at longer than 10 days because the causation could be something else in the life of the person. Understood, but we can trace those changes. And when we give the appropriate remedies to neutralize those effects and they are resolved, we can say, there you are. Now things are going better.
So what you're saying is that after having a treatment, the well-indicated remedies might also work better.
Absolutely. Absolutely so. And that would be one of the indicators that we have done it right.
Okay.
So very typically in a human chemistry opening prescription, if there's been corona jabs and boosters, that will be the first thing to balance, along with a general remedy for the constitution of the person, just to set them up in the right direction. And an immune booster goes with it, and a blood booster, because these treatments can affect us on many levels. Then next time round, we would neutralize any steroid ill effects, and as you mentioned in the beginning, antibiotic effects, and other vaccinations, immunizations, and contraceptives. So these are the things that we so often find we have to deal with. Now, there's a rare patient who has never been vaxxed, never had antibiotics. So then their issues must in some way be hereditary. So we have to look to what happened in previous generation. So one person said, no, the children have never had any of this, and yet they were born like it. I said, mother, what did you have in pregnancy? Ah, I see. So we know we have to go that far back, and that's what we have to deal with. And then things open up for the child. So we don't just look at the present moment. The present is, of course, what we are facing here and now. We've got to look to how we've come to the present moment. So a careful taking of the medical history.
Gosh, so we've covered such a lot here, Roger, haven't we? We've talked about inherited susceptibilities. We've talked about vaccinations. We've talked about antibiotics. We've talked about hormones, contraception. There are so many things, aren't there, that might have affected our state of health. The other thing that you did mention was immunity boost and blood boost. Can you just say a few words about those?
Well, what we typically use is a remedy that we call polyimmunoglobulins. So this is a combination of immunoglobulin A and G and M, maybe E, because in that case, if we use a compound, we have a more comprehensive input to the body, because we're not trying to change something. We are there giving a boost. A lot of human chemistry is about boosting. And the other thing is that if somebody isn't a vegetarian or vegan, for example, we give a remedy based on the red bone marrow, which therefore goes to the deepest part of our physical being, which is the bone marrow, from where that red blood is generated. So if one is vegetarian or vegan, then we can use ferrum phosphoricum or the substance erythropoietin. There are ways we can adapt to people. But for those who don't mind what it is, so long as it's going to work well, that is what we would typically do. And then what we hope to see is the person saying, well, somehow, that feels better. Now, I've still got my problems, but I do feel better and stronger and somehow clearer.
Okay. I understand. That's really, really important, isn't it? An important aspect of the support through this method of prescribing. And I know that you do, it runs alongside having an organ support and other remedies that are helping you through this process.
That's right. And exactly what we use will depend on the person. Now, there has been almost a danger for people to think they can reduce human chemistry to a set of formulae, like you can have a list of these are the 8 things you do and that's it, finish. That is not true. It is not right, and it will not lead to good results. We may be doing human chemistry, but we are still looking at the individual person. What is going on with and in that person? So One thing Ton Janssen has taught us to do in these cases is to ask for blood test results, which are actually a more accurate and more up-to-date means of seeing what's happening than a hair mineral test, which is 3 to 6 months out of date.
Okay.
And then we can see where irregularities may lie. In my own case, one year I said, all right, I'll have a well-man test. And they looked at some results and said, oh, let's check that again. And the result was, I realized I'd been doing something very unwise and using a heating pad in the bed that I suddenly realized was actually generating radioactivity. And it was going to lead me into very serious illness because I'm sensitive to radiation. So it was remembering Ton Janssen's comments about induction hobs are like an open microwave. I thought, I've heated that pad in the microwave. It's getting warmer during the night. It's radioactive. And so I stopped using it and asked him for advice on what to do for treating. And without that medical test, which I was reluctant to do, but said, all right, I'll be a good fellow and do it, I would have missed something going on until possibly it was too late. So it is worth having assessments from time to time if one has any doubt, because it can yield information that we can then use in a very targeted way.
That's really important. Thank you so much for that. Roger, if people want to get hold of you, have you got a website with contact details we can put in the notes?
Absolutely. Of course, 3 W's, rogerhomeopathy.com.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining everything for us today. It's been really, really lovely talking. I hope we can do this again soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Roger, for going through everything that we have covered today. My goodness, what a lot. We have brought up so many different aspects of homeopathy, and it just shows you how much more we've got to cover and just keep talking about and just help people understand so much more about homeopathy. So next week I will be joined by Heather, and we will be going through a SCIO bioresonance scan. This is something that the practitioners asked if they could do a scan on me, because I wasn't too confident about what it was going to show. And to be fair, I was blown away. So that's why Heather's coming on. She's going to explain to you what a bioresonance scan is. It's energy healing, basically, just as we do with homeopathy. So I look forward to sharing this with you and to inviting Heather back and discussing what else we can be doing with energy medicine. I do hope you can join us.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to listening to our next one. Please don't forget to follow our podcast on your chosen channel, and please do leave us a review so we can continue to share homeopathy with as many people as possible. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us on any of our social platforms mentioned in the show notes. We at Homeopathy 24/7 hope to empower you on your natural health journey.